We are going to be reviewing the Professional Services Tools Library, and our objective for today's session is to review and understand the components and capabilities of the Professional Services Tools Library. It is included now with your GP license, so all of the capabilities, if you're current on your enhancement, all of the capabilities that I'm going to show you or we're going to talk about today are available to you. So let's get started here. Our agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the Professional Services Tools Library so that you can understand its purpose and what it does. I'm going to review the types of tools that are available, and then we're going to look at each individual series and look at some of the tools in each of the series. So the PS Tools Library, you'll see it called PSTL. Just in case you see that, that's what it is. The library is a series of tools that allow you to manipulate data, and there are also some really nice functional enhancements in there as well. When we're talking about data manipulation and even the functional enhancements, you want to make sure that you use them with caution because you can change data. So if you are doing something where you're going to be manipulating data, you want to make sure that you do a backup first. That's really important. It does require a separate install and separate registration key. So you'll need to contact your account manager for information on how that process works, where you can download it and they can get your registration keys for you. So this is what the screen looks like when you launch the Professional Tools Library. It's typically launched off your navigation pane in Dynamics GP. You add it to your navigation pane and then you can open it up. You do have to be an administrator in order to open this screen. And so you can see that there are different kinds of tools: system, financial, sales, purchasing, inventory. And you'll also see that there's some consistency with some of them. There's trigger tools. You'll see modifier tools, combiner tools, and so those are kind of all the same within each functional area. So I'm going to talk about those three: the modifier tools, the combiner tools, and the trigger tools. And we'll talk about those kind of en masse because they all do the same thing. And then we'll go into some of the changes or some of the functional enhancements and data manipulation that are not modifier, trigger, or combiner tools. So first let's talk about modifier tools. Modifier tools will allow us to modify a record's key field. So for customers, that would be the customer ID. For vendors, that would be the vendor ID. For inventory, that would be the inventory ID. For accounts, that would be the general ledger account number. Keep in mind that if you're going to make changes to these, the changes flow forward and backward. So they're going to apply, of course, to all future transactions, but they're also going to apply to open and historical transactions as well. So any data that you have for that record, let's say it's a vendor, it's all going to be affected by the modifier. So, and that's the example actually that we're going to use today, and that's the vendor modifier. So the process is very simple. If you want to change a vendor ID, you put in the vendor ID that you want to change, and then you indicate what you want to change it to. You'll notice that there's an import button there. And that is in case you are revamping your entire vendor file, for example, and you want to go through Excel and work through the new vendor IDs, you want to do a mapping in Excel, you can then import those in and kind of do a mass change. Keep in mind, if you're going to do something like that, you're going to want to do a backup first, and you're going to want to make sure that no one is using accounts payable or purchasing during that time, because in that scenario, that could sure take an awful lot of time if you're redoing your whole vendor file. And by a lot of time, it might take 5 minutes or so, or maybe longer. This, when I actually did this one, it went very quickly. So I changed GK Clean I0001 to GK Clean. And you can see when I did that, all of the transactions, I had some historical transaction as well as a work transaction. Those were all converted then to the new vendor ID. Okay. So the next kind of tool that I want to talk about is a combiner tool. It allows us to combine two records, combine two vendors, combine two customers, and again, all of those changes are going to flow to your open and historic transactions. This is really handy in those situations where you've got you know, 2 or 3 vendors that different people have set up, but they're really the same vendor. This is a way that you can merge those together and clean up your vendor file and get all of the history in one place. I think that's important too. So we're going to stick with G&K cleaning here, and you can see they have, what, 2, 4, 6, those same 6 transactions that we saw, 5 in history and 1 in work. And then if we look at a different vendor called Jim Stewart, Jim's got 2 historical transactions. So what we're going to end up with, I think, is 8 transactions when we're all done here. So it's the same sort of process as we saw with the modifier. And again, notice there's an import button there. I just did one. I said I want to combine Jim Stewart into G&K cleaning. And I clicked that convert button. Now what happens is Jim Stewart doesn't exist anymore. So that vendor is essentially gone and has been merged into G&K cleaning. And you can see we've got, point out the Jim Stewart ones right here. His were these 2 right here. So those were the 2 that came from Jim Stewart. And the rest of them were part of G&K cleaning already. So we're able to merge those together. So the last kind of consistent tool that we have is their trigger tools. And this is actually, the setup is done in one place. And what a trigger tool does is it allows you to replicate records between Dynamics GP company databases. So if you've got a company that you use as a master, in my case you can see it's a little light there, but it says 2. So it's my Fabricam company that's my master database. When I add, and I've got all the boxes checked there, so when I add an account, a vendor, or a customer into Fabricam, it automatically replicates to USD. And you can see you can have a list there. I would suggest using one master database and replicating across to all of the other databases. Don't try and chain them. Just do a one-to-one. And it's pretty simple. In this case, I set myself up here in Fabricam. You can see. So I set up myself as a vendor in Fabricam, and when I did that, it replicated then into USD company. I didn't have to do any additional data entry. It replicated exactly as it was set up in Fabricam. So that's the trigger tool. And so as we're working through today all of the different functional areas, you'll see modifier, combiner, and trigger tools. I'm probably not going to talk about them unless they're unique because they do the same thing throughout the system. Okay, so let's talk about some of the financial series tools. You can see that we've got an account modifier and combiner, we've got fiscal period, checkbook modifier, fixed asset modifier, and then those master record triggers, which is what we were just talking about. And so The only thing that's really unique in these, you know, a checkbook modifier is going to modify your checkbook ID, for example, is the fiscal period modifier. And what this does is it allows you to recalculate your fiscal periods. If you change your fiscal year, for example, you can go in and reconfigure your periods, and it will carry the information forward appropriately. So that's the only one that's really unique, and hopefully that's not one that you would ever need to do. But if you did, you have that capability here with the tools now. So there's quite a number of tools available in the purchasing series. You can see there's a lot of modifiers and combiners and triggers in here. There's also some additional capabilities that we're going to look at just a few of these. There's no way that we can go through all of them, but we can at least look at a few of them. So here's the rest of the tools, and then there's some that are included only with Dynamics GP 2010. And so we'll look at a couple of those as well. So the 1099 modifier, we've all been in that situation where we get halfway through the year and realize that we have a vendor or a number of vendors that should have been 1099 vendors that we didn't mark. And so we have an opportunity here to make the change to the vendor and then run this 1099 modifier, and it will go ahead and take all of the invoices that we processed for that vendor and flag them as being 1099. And then I could go through any normal adjustments that I might have for that. Notice that you can do the print report only, so you can take a look at your results before you actually push the button. Another one of the tools, the purchasing tools, is the Payables Minimum Checks tool. And when you enable this tool, you can set on your Payables Select Check window, which is what you see here, a minimum check amount. So if you have, you know, if you have a policy that you don't cut a check for less than, I don't know, $5 or whatever, you can set that here and go through your select checks process. And when it does the selection, it won't select for any vendors who have a balance below or any within the range that you're choosing below the minimum check amount. Let's see here. And kind of in that same vein, there's a Payable Select Checks Combiner. So in our typical GP scenario, if I enter a range in the Payable Select Checks window for a vendor and then I push Build Batch, that creates a payment. If I do the same thing for the same vendor but I select a different range, it creates another payment. So I would actually have then two checks for the same vendor. Using the Payable Select Checks Combiner, if I have that enabled, it will make one payment. So there's a nice functional enhancement that you can apply just by checking a box that might make your check processing a little more streamlined. Now remember that we had a list of tools that were GP 2010 and greater or later, which we've got GP 2013 coming out here soon. And this is one of those. It's the PO, or POP as we call it, the Purchase Order Processing Cost Defaulter. So when I create a purchase order, where is it going to pull the default cost? Is it going to be the current cost, which is what it does now, or do I want to pull it from standard cost, which I can also do now if I choose that here? There's also a tool that's GP 2010 and later that changes the way that GP manages document dates. And you'll see this throughout GP, and I think I've got a list here of all of the areas that it hits. In what you would see now if you were to enter a transaction where the document or the fiscal period had not been defined, or for a particular transaction, this is the message that you would get. If I push continue, that means I don't care. I want to enter the date anyway. If canceled, it then takes me, I can go and make a change to the date. If I have doc date verify enabled, it will not let me re-enter the same date. I cannot process that transaction. I can't ignore the date, basically. And so this is available in all of these transaction areas. So you can prevent folks from making those entries. They can make the entries now. Maybe you can't post them, but then you've got to figure out why you can't post the transaction. But this will actually stop them from making the entry. So that's a really good way to streamline your data entry and your posting processes, so that you don't have to worry about that additional check to make sure the dates are correct. So GP will do that for you. There's also a pretty long list of sales series tools. Notice that all of these that are listed on this particular slide are modifiers, combiners, and triggers, so with the exception of the last one. And I'll just keep going here. You can see there's a whole bunch of additional tools that you can apply, as well as GP 2010 and later. So we're going to take a look at some of these. Notice that doc date verify is still there. So let's take a look at a couple of these. First one is a big one, I think. It's the receivables transaction unapply. So if you have receivables transactions that you have posted and are in history, notice that we've got history there in that first column, and I've unchecked the applied box, and it asks me, what do you want to do? Well, I want to unapply it. And so what that's going to do is it's going to put it back in open status so that I can reapply it. So it makes it a little easier if you're using this tool to be able to correct misapplied documents that you have in GP. It's challenging to do that without this tool. You actually can't do it. Once it's applied, and it's moved to history. This next one is pretty big for those of you who do drop shipping directly to your customers and use that sales order to purchase order link, the SOP to POP. In a traditional environment with Dynamics GP, I cannot transfer my sales order to invoice until I receive the invoice from my vendor. If I'm using the shipment notification tool, it will actually let me transfer it. So here you can see I tried to transfer it without the tool enabled, and it won't let me. 0 documents transferred successfully because it's not available as a part of that process. That doesn't exist. This is what it tells me. So the purchase order already exists. Oh, whoops. And so this, in this scenario here, I would be able to make that transfer and transfer it to invoice, and it would allow me then to come back later and do my invoice from my vendor. So that can really streamline your process. I know in a lot of cases, you want to invoice your customer as soon as you receive the shipment notification from your vendor, but maybe before you receive the invoice. Okay, so SOP PO Number Check. Now you can see, those of you who are using sales order processing, you can see that my customer PO number is a required field. It's red on this particular window. And that's because I've enabled this particular tool. And what it's doing is it's checking for duplicate purchase order numbers from my customers. And so that's a way that you can help your customers not place duplicate orders with you or follow their processes, and at least let them know that something is a duplicate. Another really good sales order processing tool is the customer item lookup. And what this does is it builds a history. When you enable it, it'll build a history of everything that your customers have purchased. And when you're in sales transaction entry, if you go to additional customer item lookup, and there's a control key sequence that you can use for that as well, type in the item number and it will tell you when they bought it, how much they paid. You can see, it'll show you duplicates as well. And so you can pull it in to your sales orders then. So it makes it a little easier when you're on the phone with a customer trying to capture the information for their order. If they say, well, I know I ordered a phone cord or a green phone, but I don't remember when it was, I want that same green phone, you can go ahead and do that lookup here. All right, so moving on to payroll. There are a few tools here, the employee modifier, the certified payroll report, and then the detail payroll activity tracking. So let's look at the certified payroll. Now I'm sorry, this is not very clear. I'm not able to enable this because I can't, because I have human resources active, and so if you're using HR, you probably wouldn't be able to use certified payroll. But you can see it adds a job number field here. If I can find my highlighter, there we go. It adds this job number field, and so you can complete that in your payroll transaction, and it will then generate a report that shows you the payroll or the transactions by job number so that you can do that certified payroll report. One more thing I want to mention is I saw yesterday or the day before a GP 2013 feature of the day that they've been releasing them for quite a while now, and one of those features was a pay code changer. So you're able to do or modifier. And so you're able, I think it was pay codes, benefits, and deduction codes. So that's something that I believe will exist in GP 2013, kind of in those modifier categories. All right, so the inventory tools, you can see a lot of modifiers and combiners here. One that I think is significant for inventory is the item reconciler. Those of you who use Dynamics GP inventory know that you do have to periodically, it's usually a month-end task, reconcile your inventory. And when you do that, it can take a really, 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 really long time. And the reason that it takes a long time is because GP does the reconcile process, so it takes all of the detail information and updates the summary information so it matches. If you're using the Professional Services Tools Item Reconciler, what it does is does a quick calculation of the details and looks at the summaries, and if they're right, it doesn't reconcile. So it does an evaluation before it goes through the reconcile process. It can be considerably faster than doing the normal GP inventory reconcile process. So those of you who have inventory, I encourage you to investigate using the tools reconciler instead. All right, we also have a series of system tools these are things that you probably wouldn't use on a regular basis. The database disabler is nice because you can actually disable a database from appearing in lookups. So when you go to log in, you can just take it off the screen. If it's like your test database or something like that, you only want it to appear in certain conditions. The update user date will actually update the user date if you have to leave GP open to run integrations or something like that. It'll update your user date. to the next day if if the machine is left on. But one that I want to talk about here is the shortcuts copy. And so this can be really handy as for an administrator when they're setting up a new user. In this case, I've got, and this is the shortcuts on your navigation pane. So you can see here I've got Jeff, my user Jeff, and I've copied the shortcuts to the user Tammy, and they are identical. And you can see down here at the bottom, here's Jeff, and then I just copied him, here's Tammy. And so it just makes it easier. If you've got certain roles that you want to have certain shortcuts, it just makes it easier to manage those. All right. Well, today we took about 30 minutes, so hopefully you got a good taste of what the Professional Services Tools Library does for you. If you have any questions, and actually I'll pause and ask Yvette, did any questions come through in the chat window?
No questions yet. Those
Okay.
of you that have a question, please type it in.
And we'll wait for just a few minutes. I did want to make sure that everyone is aware of events, our upcoming user conference, Aspire 2012, on the 23rd of October. That will be in Columbus, Ohio. Please contact your account manager for more information on that. And
Tammy, we have a question.
Great.
Will you send out the presentation?
This has actually been recorded, and so you will receive a link for